Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're walking through a neighborhood that still smells faintly of river water and detergent, where porch rails shine with fresh scrub marks and the mailboxes wear thin skirts of silt. The sun goes down behind emptying dumpsters, and somewhere, a box fan hums like a patient chorus trying to dry the day. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And in the comments, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. I like seeing our little constellation of night owls. Now, turn off the lights, maybe let a fan hum in the background, and let's begin tonight's journey together. The water came at noon. Not like a monster, but like a bureaucrat, steady, unavoidable, carrying paperwork you hadn't asked for. It crept over the curb and made itself at home on everyone's first stare. Then the second. Folks took photos from bedroom windows as if the river had RSVP'd to a block party and brought too much ice. I was lucky my house sits 3 shy inches above stubborn but Caleb's rental. Down by the bend. Woke up a bathtub. That night, I stood on my porch with thermoses and towels while neighbors passed buckets and jokes that sounded brave until you heard the worry curling inside them. 2 days later, Caleb called. "Mom, we're displaced," he said, the pause swallowing pride. Lila took the phone. "The adjuster says weeks," she added. "Brisk, like a weather report." I pictured the swollen baseboards. The couch trying to remember what buoyant means. The crib they'd bought last month. Still in tape. "Come here," I said. "We'll make it work until the floor's dry." The sentence felt like a folded blanket. I set up the guest room, clean sheets. A lamp that forgives midnight trips. A bowl of clementines, because I have always believed vitamin C softens a hard day. Caleb and Lila arrived with 2 suitcases. A storage bin labeled baby, and an air of people trying to look grateful on a schedule. Lila hugged me, just the shoulders, and surveyed the hallway like a realtor evaluating angles. "We'll be out in a few weeks," Caleb promised, and I couldn't help smiling at the optimism lives invent when paperwork is pending. Academic phrase of the day, disaster solidarity, the public argument that when floods happen, strangers become cousins for a while. Trading casseroles, shop vacs, and advice about bleach ratios as if we all grew up in the same kitchen. In those first 4 days, we did. Lila brought muffins. Mrs. Lynn from next door loaned us a dehumidifier that sounded like a very determined dragon. The church opened its gym for storage and stories. We knew each other's pets' anxieties by name. In my house, kindness put out folding chairs and then quickly learned choreography. Lila moved like she owned momentum, her hands tidied before her sentences finished. On day 2, she stood in my pantry and held up my jar of dried basil. Suspicious. "Expired spices can make a whole dish taste tired," she declared, and placed it in a trash bag with a ceremonial thud. "We'll replace the staples," she promised, by dinner. My paprika had been demoted. My rice reassigned to clear bins with chalkboard labels, and there was an aproned lecture on the undead nature of old nutmeg. I'm not precious about nutmeg, but the chalk handwriting on my shelves looked like new names on old headstones. Quick, quirky sidebar: most sell-by dates are about peak flavor, not safety. Dried spices won't make you a ghost. They'll just politely refuse to sing. Real scientists would tell you that ground spices fade faster than whole ones because surface area is gossip. My mother, however, swore you could resurrect cumin by scolding it. Lila also believed in laundry as theater bedding stripped at dawn. Towels marching like troops from bathroom to machine. Linen sprays that smelled like a cottage with opinions. I made room for her method. I remember pregnancy nesting. I remember building order where biology was improvising. Joke 1 when the linen spray announced notes of morning meadow. I asked if it came with a tiny cow. Lila didn't laugh. Caleb did. the small way. By day 3, a phrase began to return to the house like a hungry cat. When we move in, Lila would say it conversationally, as if commenting on clouds. When we move in, I'm painting the hallway something brighter, she mused, pausing in front of the family photos. When we move in, the dining room could be an office, open concept. I reminded her the concept currently included me. She would smile, wide. The way insistence dresses as charm. Caleb kissed my cheek and muttered thanks, and I watched the new pronouns set their luggage down. Elder wisdom. Reflection. Hospitality works when everyone remembers it's borrowed time. A guest is a poem. It stops with grace. A host is a lighthouse. It shines without demanding ships rename the shore. We made a schedule for the kitchen, because a town without logistics after a flood is a potluck without forks. Breakfast was communal oatmeal with walnuts pretending to be cardiologists. Lunch was whoever remembered. I cooked dinner. Sturdy thing stew, roasted chicken, a salad that squeaked with good intention. Lila offered to shop and returned with clean versions of everything new oils. New flowers, something called living salt, which I confess made me nervous about the ethics. Joke 2, I held the bag up to my ear to see if I could hear a pulse. The nights carried quiet as something fragile. I could hear Caleb on the phone, the spreadsheet tone of a man wrangling adjusters. I could hear Lila's podcasts teaching unborn geniuses to solve climate change in utero. I could hear my own house deciding whether this was weather or an annexation. I breathed with it. We would be a family that survives this together, I told the fan. The fan believed me. On day 5, I found 2 men and a dolly at my door, smiling like coupons. We're here for the sideboard, one asked. The sideboard belonged to my grandmother, Mahogany, stubborn, a storage of holiday gravity. Lila appeared in leggings and purpose. They'll take the dining set to storage, she said. Mold risk. I looked at the piece. Dry as a proverb. There's no mold, I said. The house never took water. She held up a moisture reader like a badge. It beeped. See, she said, as if electronics could measure lineage. Joke 3. It's beeping at the mahogany because it's dehydrated from hearing the word open concept. Caleb took my arm. It's just temporary, he whispered. Temporary is a generous cousin of permanent when your name isn't on the receipt. The movers wrapped the chairs in plastic that looked like regret and hauled my great-grandmother's china out in a box labeled kitchen misc. I felt something tilt inside me, not anger, exactly, but an angle. The way a picture frame leans when someone bumps the wall and doesn't notice. I didn't erupt. I put the kettle on and made tea the way you would for a small courtroom. I asked Lila to sit. She did, reluctantly, as if chairs were for other people. We agreed on a few weeks, I said. We didn't agree on renovations. Her face cycled through 3 expressions and settled on gentle condescension. We're family, she said, and it doesn't make sense for you to be alone in a big house. Caleb and I can handle the decisions. You can relax. There it was, softly, like a cushion over a mouth. I looked past her to the hallway where my late mother-in-law, Evelyn Hart, stared from a black and white photo with the kind of eyes that double-check contracts. My fingers remembered paper, 15 years ago, after my husband died. Evelyn had sat me down at a cherry desk and slid a sealed folder to my side. For when you need it, she'd said. The way women pass down recipes for weather. I finished my tea and stood. I'm going to check on Mrs. Lynn, I said, because visiting a neighbor is also a boundary. I walked next door, where the dehumidifier dragon had gone quiet. Mrs. Lynn handed me a slice of almond cake and a look that asked the question kindly. I told her we were accommodating, and she nodded like a person who recognizes the word from fairy tales. On my way back, I did not go inside. I kept walking past the block-spruced gardens and down to the little hotel by the highway, the one with carpets that try hard and coffee that doesn't. I booked a room with a firm pillow and a view of the parking lot, the most honest skyline after a flood. Then I took out my phone and called Adrian Cole, attorney, keeper of adjectives that do not flinch. The number still lived in my contacts under in case. He answered on the second ring. "I wondered when I'd hear from you," he said, voice like a lamp. "I have a folder to fetch," I replied, and the calm that arrived in my chest felt like dry ground. Tonight, I would sleep where no chalk labels bossed my rice. Tomorrow, I would open Evelyn's envelope, the one with the trust and the deed and the conditions written in a hand that believed in fences. Hospitality is a beautiful room. Ownership is the house. The river had receded. It was time to make sure my shoreline had a name. Morning smells like lobby coffee and lemon scent ambition. I shower, put on my bring a folder cardigan, and call Adrian Cole from the edge of the hotel bed that thinks it's Switzerland. He answers on the first ring. "Come by," he says. "We'll start with paper and end with peace." The sentence is a chair. I sit in it all the way to his office. Adrian's suite lives over a florist, Good Omen, even on Tuesdays. He greets me with a smile the shape of a notary stamp and sets a cream envelope on the conference table as if it's a bird that might spook. "From Evelyn," he says, tapping the flap only once. "You remember she asked me to keep it sealed unless or until you needed the fence more than the view." I do remember. Evelyn Hart believed in two things: iron skillets and contingencies. We open the envelope together. Out slides a trust, dated the year after my husband died. Transferring title of the house into the Hart Residence Trust, with me as lifetime beneficiary and Adrian as successor trustee. There's a clause. Written in Evelyn's careful pen, occupancy may be extended temporarily and at will to family after a disaster, provided my quiet enjoyment is honored and my property choices remain mine. If my comfort or safety is compromised by toxic influence, her words. Surprisingly spicy, the trustee may revoke occupancy on my say-so with 30 days notice. I can practically hear Evelyn add, in her Sunday voice, "And no one is tossing the mahogany." Academic phrase of the day. Quiet enjoyment, the public argument that when you have the right to live somewhere, you also have the right to live there without harassment, interference, or someone relabeling your rice with chalkboard seal. It's not silence, it's sanctity. We build a plan that prefers sunlight to thunder. Step 1, memorialize the invitation and its terms, my offer after the flood, the few weeks, the guest room arrangement. Step 2, send a polite but pointed letter to Caleb and Lila confirming boundaries, no removals, no renovations, no open concept manifestos, and invoking the trust's temporary occupancy rules. Step 3, if the letter is treated like set dressing. Issue a notice revoking occupancy with Evelyn's 30-day clock. Step 4, file a precautionary affidavit with the recorder so no one can whisper my deed into a banker's ear and get credit for it. Adrian asks for details. I hand him yesterday the pantry purge, the linen parade, the movers eyeing heirlooms like calories. He scribbles with the economy of someone who charges by the adjective and doesn't waste them. We'll also notify the bank, he says, with a copy of the trust and a fraud alert, in case a bright idea visits a loan officer. Elder wisdom reflection when storms test your roof. Tend the rafters, but also put your name back on the mailbox in ink that laughs at rain. Joke 1 sneaks out when the paralegal brings a tray. Careful with the muffins if they're living. Lila might enroll them in a charter school. The paralegal snorts into her tea. Adrian's mouth does a small detour toward a smile. We draft the letter. It is firm and calm. An adult in a room full of tired toddlers. It welcomes my son. It blesses the baby. It also states, plainly. That the house is not moving forward without me. That the dining room will remain a dining room unless I say it isn't. And that any contractors who set foot on my porch without my consent will learn the Latin for no. As Adrian Prince. My phone buzzes with 3 messages in a row. Mrs. Lin saw a moving truck again. Men taking china boxes. You okay? A neighbor from 2 doors down, Lila, posted that you finally moved to assisted living. So proud to help. Is that true? Caleb, Mom, can we talk tonight? Things got busy. Busy is the kind of word that hires a tuxedo, so you don't notice it's not wearing shoes. We send the letter by email and courier. I take a paper copy for the hotel nightstand bedtime reading for when the fan is practicing its cursive. Quick, quirky sidebar. Certified mail green cards. The little return receipt postcards still ride the postal system like analog truth. Somewhere, a rubber stamp wakes up for its best life, and a signature learns it has consequences. I stop at the house in daylight to water my poor geraniums, who have witnessed more drama than annuals deserve. The front walk is wet. Not from rain, but from someone's determination to make the porch smell like eucalyptus. Lila opens the door as if she's been auditioning for it. Oh, good, she says. The dining set's going, there's no sense clinging to... Dated. I hold up my hand like a crossing guard for heirlooms. Pause, I say. Read. I hand her Adrian's letter. She scans, lips moving, then looks up with the serene aggression of a spa brochure. Caleb said you were overwhelmed, she says. We're helping. I invited you to be dry. I answer. I did not invite you to be curators. Joke 2. Featherlight also. My paprika filed for emotional damages. Caleb emerges from the hallway with the face of a man who knows paperwork just arrived with a trumpet. Let's slow down, he tells Lila. And for a moment, my son returns to the room. I water the geraniums while they confer in the kitchen, the one still bearing chalk art that insists my flower is now ancestral. On the way out, I pat the mahogany sideboard. Hold fast, I whisper. Because furniture deserves encouragement when people forget how to be people. Back at the hotel, Adrian calls. The bank's fraud department flagged an online inquiry from a device geolocated to my living room about using home equity for improvements. The timing overlaps my encounter with the moisture meter. Adrian has already faxed yes, faxed the trust, and a do not touch letter. The banker wrote back, understood faster than my basil wilts. Joke 3, God bless the one remaining fax machine on earth. May it live forever in a closet labeled 2010. We schedule a meeting for tomorrow, me, Adrian, and, if he'll come, Caleb, not to stage an ambush, to hand him the fence posts his grandmother planted. I text my son lunch tomorrow at Adrian's office, just us. 3 dots appear, vanish, then finally, yes. I use the quiet evening for inventory of the kind that heals. I list what I miss: my lamp, my chair, the exact way my kitchen smells at 6 p.m. when the onions first surrender. I list what I don't miss: chalk labels with opinions, towels that stand at attention like they might salute. I write a third list titled, What I Will Say Once and Only Once. It's not long, it doesn't need to be. Boundaries are short sentences. Before sleep, I place Evelyn's trust on the desk and read the clause again: temporary, at will, so long as my quiet enjoyment is honored. I imagine her voice saying the words with that pinched smile she wore when someone pretended a suggestion was a rule. She raised practical men and persistent gardens. She would tell me to use the tools she left. The hotel fan hums. Outside, a late truck downshifts like a sigh. I picture tomorrow the conference table, Caleb's hands, Adrian's steady stack of copies. I do not picture Lila. That room needs fewer perfumes. I think of our neighborhood inching back from the flood mattresses propped like weary sails. Refrigerators airing their truths on front lawns, children drawing hopscotch on dry concrete because chalk should announce play. Not pantry coops. The water receded. Now the tide of entitlement does, too. One stamped letter at a time. When the lamp clicks off, the dark is kind, not hungry. The house I love is 3 blocks away, holding its breath the way good houses do when asked to host a storm. I promise it, silently, that we will reopen the window soon and let the evening come in the old way, through screens and a recipe that belongs to no one but us. Caleb arrives to Adrian's office looking like a man who has been negotiating with buckets. He carries a folder that has only 2 papers inside, and the rest of it is air. Adrian greets him with the calm of a librarian who knows the thunder shelf. We sit at the conference table where yesterday's muffins have been replaced by stern water glasses. The trust lies between us like a map. Grandma's handwriting, Caleb says, brushing the claws with his eyes. His mouth tries a smile that lands as apology. Adrian begins the way rivers begin measured. He explains the trust's bones lifetime residence for me, temporary occupancy for family at my will. And that word Evelyn loved enough to underline quiet enjoyment. Your mother invited you after the flood, he says. You accepted. Changes to fixtures, furniture, or function are not part of the invitation. Caleb nods, cheeks coloring like a thermometer, deciding it has an opinion. I didn't plan the movers, he admits. Lila was trying to help. The last word arrives like a couch left in the rain, recognizable. Heavy. Not fit for the room anymore. Academic phrase of the day, moral licensing. The public argument that when we do one good deed, we feel entitled to misbehave a little, as if ethics were a punch card that earns us a free trespass. Surviving a flood does not buy you a mahogany pass. We agree on immediate steps, halt all removals, return the china from storage by week's end, restore my dining room to its original state of stories. No more chalk manifestos on my pantry, no equity inquiry calls, and no social posts announcing me to assisted living while I'm still making my own coffee. Adrian drafts a short stipulation for Caleb to sign. Lila will hate this. Caleb says, softly, like a weather report with hail. Then she can hate it from her parents' sofa, I reply. Gentler than it reads on paper, he signs. The pen doesn't wobble. Joke one stretches its legs. If we must label something, let's label the label maker. Temporary guest. Adrian almost laughs with his eyebrows. We break for air, on the sidewalk. The town smells like bleach and bounce back. Caleb stares at a florist's bucket of carnations with the intensity of a person who wants instructions. Mom, I swear I never meant I know. I tell him. Intentions are polite. Boundaries are better. He nods, then ventures. Lila's stressed with the baby and the insurance. She keeps talking about efficiency. Efficiency is a wonderful party trick, I say. It is not a value that should redecorate your mother. Back at the house. The door opens on a citrus fog. Lila stands at the threshold in a sweater that would like applause. Her smile is stage lighting. We were just making space, she says, taking in Adrian behind us. Who's this, the fence? I answer. And the map. Adrian offers his card. Lila flips it like a coin and pockets it like a souvenir. Caleb, she says, looking past me. He meets her gaze with the quiet I watched him practice at the conference table. We're pausing, he says. Everything goes back. Her expression cycles through denial, bargaining, and decor shame. But mold she starts. I hold up Evelyn's claws. No mold, I say. Plenty of ink. Elder wisdom reflection. When people show up with certainty and a label maker, Ask them to name what they're really trying to fix. 9 times out of 10. It's a feeling, not a pantry. The movers return the china by late afternoon. Bubble wrap, sighing like small apologies. I unwrap each plate and tell it a story on the way home. This one carried peaches in '84. This one survived Uncle Ray's fork politics. Quick, quirky sidebar bone china isn't named because it's delicate. Early formulas literally used ground animal bone ash. The result is strong and translucent like a good boundary. You can hold it to the light and see that it knows what it's doing. While we restack the cabinet, Mrs. Lin taps the door frame with a Tupperware of almond tofu. "For stamina," she says, eyes taking in the room the way mothers inventory weather. Lila thanks her too brightly. "We're modernizing," she adds. Mrs. Lin smiles the smile of a woman who has outlived 3 trends and 2 pretenders. "Houses prefer continuity," she says. "Also soup." Adrian photographs the returned pieces, logs a short inventory, and emails Ruth, the bank's fraud officer, with our stipulation and the signed halt. "Paper first," he reminds me, which is the closest lawyers get to singing lullabies. Lila wanders the hallway, touching frames like a docent with an agenda. She stops at Evelyn's photograph. "She was formidable," Lila says. "Correct," I reply. "Joke 2 pats in wearing slippers, and notably anti-open concept." Caleb suggests dinner out. A truce move. I decline with kindness. "Tonight I want my own kitchen to remember me," I say. He takes Lila for burgers. I take onions to the cutting board and let them surrender on schedule. The house exhales in time with the sizzle. I reset my pantry 1 jar at a time. Returning labels to the realm of sanity rice is rice again. Not ancestral grain synergy. The door opens around 8. Lila walks in ahead of Caleb with a look I recognize from certain patients' families, the one that precedes a speech. I felt ambushed. She begins, dropping her purse onto my grandmother's chair. "You told the neighborhood I moved to assisted living," I say, gentle as a cautery pen. "That was my speech." She flushes. "That was a miscommunication," she offers. "It was a sentence you typed," I answer. She looks at Caleb for rescue. He's busy reading the stipulation again like it's a new language and he wants to pass. Adrian, still here finishing an email, clears his throat only once. "Miss Lila, the trust allows you to stay under Mrs. Hart's roof at her will. The will is conditional if quiet enjoyment is compromised again. Occupancy will be revoked with 30 days' notice. That is not drama, that is procedure." Lila pivots from indignation to calculus. "So what do you want?" she asks me, and for the first time all week, the question sounds like a door instead of a runway. "What I offered on day 1, I say. A safe, dry guest room, breakfast in common, my kitchen, my say. No renovations, no posts inventing my address. And one more thing, you treat this house like you'll want it to remember you kindly." She chews the air. "Fine," she says. "Small." Caleb squeezes her shoulder. The kind gesture that also says, "We're done negotiating." We set the garbage bag of expired spices beside the back door for me to sort on a day when I can be charitable to nutmeg. We rehang the dining room mirror. We place the sideboard where the sun loves it. The room looks like itself again, the way a person looks like herself when she returns from borrowing someone else's coat. Joke 3. Soft as a dish towel. Tomorrow I'm reclaiming my living salt. I prefer my seasonings to be sedentary. Caleb smiles into his hands. Lila lets out something like a laugh and tries it on. It doesn't quite fit, but at least she's touching it. Adrian leaves us with copies and a planned follow-up inspection by a contractor. I choose one with eyes and not a chalk addiction. Photographs of each room, and a friendly notice to the HOA about flood scammers pushing emergency modernizations. He also gives Caleb a list titled "Things Men Can Do That Count," which includes taking out the trash, changing the AC filter, and telling your mother before you invite a forklift to meet her heirlooms. Caleb tucks it into his pocket like a truce. Night folds around the porch. I stand at the sink and wash 2 plates that I've heard enough for a day. Lila appears with a dish towel. Tentative. I didn't mean to make you feel displaced, she says, the word stumbling over itself. Displaced is for floods. I answer. Today was about place. We both have one. She nods. I'll try, she says. It isn't poetry, but it is a verb. Upstairs. The guest room lamp throws a warm circle where a new baby will someday learn to blink at light. I pause in the doorway and adjust the quilt so the pattern makes sense again. I turn off the switch and the house hums a satisfied sound, like a fridge after you stop opening it just to check. When I get to my room, I write 3 lines in my notebook. The fence stood, the map helped, tomorrow. I buy onions by the sack. Then I add a 4th line for Evelyn, thank you for the claws and the handwriting. Sleep comes easier in a kitchen-scented house. The river is back in its bed, and so are we, each in our chosen rooms, in the morning. There will be a contractor with a clipboard and a basil plant that's forgiving, for tonight. There's the fan writing its steady cursive and a mahogany that doesn't have to brace for wheels. By 8 a.m., the contractor I chose, Marisol Duarte. Clipboard confidence. Boots that don't apologize. Steps over the threshold and nods to the house like it's a colleague. We'll check moisture, air, and attitude, she says, tapping the meter. If the mahogany rolls its eyes, I'll note it. She moves room to room, scanning baseboards and drywall, reading numbers like a nurse reads vitals. The device chirps twice near a window where yesterday's rain threw shade, then settles. Dry as good news, she pronounces. I could kiss the floor. Caleb trails her with a pencil. Lila trails him with a face rehearsed for headlines. At the pantry, Marisol pauses at a chalk label that says Ancestral Grain Synergy and blinks. Slowly, Joke One dusts the air. That's just rice, I offer. It's on a personal journey. Academic phrase of the day, moral hazard. The public argument that when people are shielded from consequences, they often take bigger risks. Post-flood generosity can turn into post-flood entitlement if no one remembers who's paying the light bill or whose name lives on the mailbox. Marisol pokes a meter at the dining room wall. No water traveled here, she confirms. Whatever tried to move your furniture wasn't mold. She eyes the sideboard with respect. I grew up with a twin to this, she adds. Thanksgiving survived on it. My grandmother's mahogany preens, invisibly. Quick, quirky sidebar, gypsum drywall has a paper face that mold loves, like gossip loves an open window, but it only parties when moisture hangs around longer than a polite guest, under 12 to 15% moisture content. Even the spores get bored and leave. Meters don't read lineage or bold ideas, they read water. We sign off on a simple scope, replace 1 damp strip of insulation in the crawl space. Reseal the back door threshold and install a quiet fan in the laundry room that has been practicing its own weather. No demolition shows up for attention. No open concept arrives with a megaphone. Lila asks about brightening the hallway. Marisol smiles the way professionals smile when the syllabus says science, and someone asks for sparkles. We're here for dry, she says. Paint is elective. Elder wisdom reflection when a house survives a storm. Don't redecorate your grief onto its walls. Fix what's broken. Oil what squeaks. And let the rooms keep telling their original jokes. At 10, the HOA gathers in the church gym with a podium and a tray of cookies that taste like budget meetings. We pass around flyers about scam contractors with magnetic signs, fraudulent mold inspections, and equity lines that pretend to be sympathy. I share 2 minutes at the mic, ask to see a license, ask for references, ask yourself who benefits from urgency. Mrs. Lin waves her Tupperware like a flag and adds, Also soup. The room laughs, grateful to land on something broth-shaped. Joke 2 nudges the cookies. If a contractor arrives with a label maker, check their meter before your pantry, I say. Even Lila's mouth discovers an uncurling motion. Back home, the mail offers 3 small, sturdy mercies. 1, the bank's fraud department letter confirming an alert on any equity inquiries. 2, a card from HR at the clinic where I used to volunteer. We miss your soups on Thursdays. And 3, a green certified mail slip showing Ruth the banker. Not the attorney signed for Adrian's packet. Paper doesn't hug. But it can pat your shoulder with authority. At noon, Lila takes a call on the porch, voice pitched to innocent. I catch only misunderstanding and assisted living rumor before she steps back in with a carefully composed apology. I posted a correction, she says, not fully meeting my eyes. I wrote that you're hosting us after the flood, and I'm grateful. It's not poetry, but the punctuation is progress. Caleb squeezes her hand like a man rewarding a toddler for identifying the circle. We sit at the table, me, Caleb, Lila, with Marisol's report in triplicate, Adrian's stipulation, and a calendar. Your rentals dry out is done Friday, Caleb says, reading from his phone. Adjuster says, flooring in 10 days, paint after. We could be back in 3 weeks if the baseboards behave. We draft an occupancy addendum to the original invitation 3 weeks. Kitchen boundaries stay. No furniture moves. Guest room only. My quiet enjoyment capitalized like a proper noun. Everyone initials. The pens make tidy weather. I tape a 1-page house rules on the inside of a cabinet door, where good commandments live: ask before moving, replace what you finish, no social media about addresses, dinner in common twos thirst. Open concept applies only to kindness. Joke 3 scribbles a smiley next to that last line. Even rules want a cardigan. Afternoon brings the sound of saws from the crawl space and the small, hopeful cough of a new laundry fan spinning toward duty. I brew tea and bring Marisol lemonade. Your house is stubborn in the right ways, she says. It survived because somebody respected the grade when they poured the foundation. I think of Evelyn's pen, of the clause she underlined, and tell Marisol there was a woman who stacked boundaries like bricks and called them love. Caleb spends an hour on the phone wrangling delivery slots and flooring choices that sound like pastries weathered maple, toasted oat. Lila floats an idea about hosting a tiny baby shower planning night in the dining room. I point to the rules and then to the backyard. If you want to string 2 paper garlands on the maple and sip lemonade for 90 minutes. I can share clothespins, I say. Inside is for living. Outside is for confetti. She tests the fence with her eyes and then nods. Outside, she says, tasting the word like it's new but not unpleasant. Mid-afternoon. Adrian calls to say the county recorder stamped our precautionary affidavit. The trust is now an exclamation point in the property records. Any mortgage mail that tries flirting with your deed will get friend-zoned, he adds. I put the copy in the binder behind a tab that used to hold paint swatches. Safety gets the nicer sleeve. The baby kicks. Neela presses my hand to her belly like a peace offering, and I feel a small foot argue with biology for a breath. The room changes temperature. We cover the table with fabric samples for a crib quilt I might sew later soft blues. A citrus square that looks like a sunrise practicing, and for 10 quiet minutes, we are 3 people who want a small new person to meet a house that knows its job. Toward evening, the HOA sends an email about a community workday mulch and new flood markers. Caleb volunteers us before I can, which is the right direction for a son to lean. Lila signs up to coordinate refreshments, a title grand enough to keep her busy with cups and not with closets. Progress is sometimes just giving the right task, the right verbs. As dusk arranges itself on the porch, Marisol hands me a signed no mold, No intrusion letter with a contractor's seal that glints like a tiny medal. I post it on the inside of the utility room door where someday a tired version of me will find it and exhale. Caleb orders pizza, 2 larges, 1 honorable salad, and for once. The dining room is just a dining room plates. Laughter that remembers how. And a conversation about floor colors that doesn't attempt to coo. Later. I step into the yard. The maple looks patient. Fireflies practice their thesis on timing. Mrs. Lynn waves over the fence, raises a glass jar of soup like a benediction, and calls. Good fences make good naps. I raise my mug back across the grass. Lila and Caleb sit close, speaking low. I don't lean in. Boundaries include not eavesdropping when the people you love are trying to grow. Inside, I add 2 lines to my notebook. The house rules look good on a hinge. Mercy is not the same as surrender. I tuck Marisol's invoice and report into the binder. Behind Adrian's stipulation. Behind Evelyn's underlined clause. Paper has become a kind of callous proof that we touched something sharp and healed where we needed to. Before bed, I walk the hall and touch the frame's weddings, graduations, an out-of-focus dog mid-sneeze. I stop at Evelyn's photograph. We used your ink, I tell her. The fan writes its soft cursive above me. The gold watch ticks without swagger on the dresser, and the house, my house, rests like a ship in a harbor it recognizes. Tomorrow, we'll move mulch, and my basil will act faint again for attention. Tomorrow we'll count weeks on Caleb's calendar and bolts on the new threshold. Tonight, the mahogany hums its old song, and the chalk in the pantry minds its manners. Morning arrives with a courtesy knock from the sun across the blinds. I make oatmeal the diplomatic kind with walnuts that pretend they're cardiologists and check the porch for anything with postage. On the mat, a bank envelope with the confident weight of a firm handshake. Inside, a fraud alert confirmation. We have placed a protective note on any home equity inquiries for the Hart Residence Trust. No advances will be considered without trustee authorization. Adrian's fax yesterday grew a spine overnight. I place the letter in the binder beneath Evelyn's underlined clause, and the house seems to sit a little taller on its foundation. Caleb leaves early to meet the flooring crew at the rental. Lila floats through the kitchen in a robe that thinks it's a press release. I'm planning a tiny drop-in later, she says. Just a few girlfriends to see the baby's corner. I tilt my head toward the rules taped inside the cabinet. Backyard for confetti, I remind. Soft as a towel. She blinks, then resets her smile. Backyard, she agrees, like a person practicing a new vowel. By 10. Mrs. Lynn texts an enlarging rumor, a neighborhood thread saying I finally moved to a facility because big houses are dangerous for elders after floods. The word elders lands like someone thought it needed a walker. I type a calm reply for the thread still in my home, currently hosting my son and daughter-in-law after the flood. Thank you for the kindness, and let the neighbor's affection do the rest. Within minutes, there are hearts, soup emojis, and one enthusiastic bring back Thursday soups. Academic phrase of the day, reputational repair. The public argument that when a whisper runs ahead of you, you correct it politely and consistently until your feet and the truth share the same pace. No mud wrestling, just logs, links, and your real address. At noon, my phone rings with a number in the banker font. A polite man named Gordon confirms he received our affidavit and wants to verify a home improvement inquiry that came from a device geolocated to my living room the day the moisture meter auditioned for Broadway. No improvement without trustee signatures, I say, pouring tea that smells like chores. He reads it back to me. Every noun in place. Elder wisdom reflection. When the stakes are your roof. Speak in nouns, verbs will behave. Caleb returns mid-afternoon with sawdust in his hair and news that their flooring order arrived early. 2 weeks, maybe less, he says. And that maybe is the nicest weather I've heard in days. Lila, energized by a clock, strings 2 lemon-yellow garlands between the maple and the fence. She places a small table with plastic cups and a pitcher of pink lemonade that looks like it learned manners at a garden club. Just an hour, she promises. And for once, the promise wears work boots. 3 friends arrive. All kind faces and cautious eyes. I bring out a tray of cut fruit and make jokes about the maple filing for an events permit. Joke 1. Barely above a whisper. The women coo at the tiny stack of onesies and talk about bassinets. And for a moment, the yard smells only like laundry and faint citrus. When the hour is up, I clap softly, the way a porch applauds, and they gather cups without ceremony. As the gate clicks shut, I hear Lila exhale, part relief, part recalibration. Inside. The mail chimes again, digital this time. E-statements, my insurance account, a utilities notice, and a flag change of mailing address attempt that someone wisely denied because Adrian's affidavit made the server suspicious of charisma. Quick, quirky sidebar. A surprising number of institutions still believe in paper stop mail cards at the post office. Fraudsters love them. But the modern post has a secret weapon in form delivery emails that show you scans of what's coming. Paper previews tiny X-rays for mailboxes. I add the service to my account. Let light arrive early. Late afternoon. The living room asks for a conversation. I place 3 things on the coffee table: the bank's letter, the HOA scam flyer, and Evelyn's trust, open to the clause that reads like a grandmother staring over her spectacles. Caleb sits on the couch, posture of a man trying not to scuff the truth. Lila perches on the chair nearest the hallway, as if proximity to exits can influence outcomes. I want us to be clear, I begin, voice at the same volume I use for reading recipes. You are here because of a flood. You are staying because of family. You will leave because your home will be ready. Not because this one is available. This house is held in trust for my lifetime. I am its beneficiary. Adrian is its fence. We will be kind within those facts. But we will not edit them. Lila opens her mouth. Caleb lifts a hand, small as a traffic whisper. We got excited, he admits, cheeks warming and scared. He adds, which is the sentence that unlocks chairs. Lila's chin softens. I wanted things efficient, she says. And the word sounds less like a bulldozer this time, more like a broom. I posted something dumb, she continues. I corrected it. Joke 2 knocks politely. I appreciate a public retraction. They burn fewer calories than rumor wildfires. Caleb snorts. Lila almost does. We set a calendar in ink flooring finishes by the 14th, paint by the 18th, baseboards by the 20th. Move back weekend of the 22nd if dry out meters sing the right notes. I add final walkthrough to my own list because trust plus verify is a duet I enjoy. We initial a short addendum. 3 weeks remains 3 weeks. Backyard only for guests. No inquiries to banks. No more declarative posts about my address. The pens make their tidy weather again. Around 5. The doorbell finds its purpose. Gordon from the bank stands on the porch. A real person with a clipboard and a name tag that doesn't shout. I was nearby, he says, and thought a face-to-face would be reassuring. We stand at the dining table, and I show him the trust, the affidavit, the contractor's dry report. He nods like a man who appreciates paper that wears shoes. We'll flag any attempt to collateralize, he says. And call this number. He taps my name and looks at Lila. We deal in signatures, not enthusiasm. She nods, a little paler, a little wiser. We shake hands. Joke 3. Gentle as a dish towel, if you ever need soup on Thursdays. I know a woman. He laughs. Pockets a card from Mrs. Lynn's clinic. That woman runs a referral program powered by broth and takes his leave. Dusk drapes itself over the maple. Caleb heads to the rental to check on locks. Lila takes a slow walk around the block, hands cradling the future. I stand in the hallway where the photographs live. My husband's smile from a summer picnic. Caleb at 8, gap-toothed and ferocious about popsicles. Evelyn in her Sunday dress. Pen probably in her purse even then. I whisper thanks to the air shaped like her handwriting. I call Adrian with the update. He listens without interrupting, then says, "You did today with nouns. We set a tentative date, 2 weeks out, to close the precautionary file if behavior keeps behaving, and if it doesn't, he asks." Then we move to Evelyn's 30-day clause. I say, "Steady?" He doesn't congratulate me. He confirms the path. That's what good help sounds like. Before bed, I water the basil. Which is dramatic again, it prefers opera to dialogue. I indulge it. Mercy isn't the same as surrender. I write 3 lines in my notebook. Bank letter itcha spine. Rumors tire when truth walks daily. 3-week clock started ticking politely. The fan writes its looping cursive. The house breathes the slow breath of buildings that survived and were allowed to remain themselves. Somewhere beyond the fence, Mrs. Lynn's dehumidifier naps, and the street remembers its dry name. I turn off the lamp and say to the quiet, we will keep choosing the fence and the map. The quiet, being wise, agrees. Saturday brings the neighborhood workday, the kind of morning where everyone wears old shirts with heroic intentions, and the mulch pile looks like a gentle mountain asking for many small shovels. Caleb shoulders a rake. Lila secures a visor that wants applause and takes charge of lemonade. I bring a clipboard with the sign-in sheet because paper makes goodwill measurable. The maple throws polite shade. The street smells like damp bark and beginnings. We place new flood height markers on the telephone poles, thin aluminum bands that wink in the sun. I steady the ladder while Caleb screws one in at chest level. Good, I say. Visible, but not bossy. He grins. The band catches the light like a lesson that prefers to be remembered without scolding. Academic phrase of the day. Constructive notice. The public argument that when information is out, where any reasonable person could see it, the law treats you as if you did see it. Our little silver bands are neighborhood versions of that. So are posted house rules, recorded affidavits, and trust clauses kept where sunlight can find them. By 11, the volunteer rhythm is a hum. Lila's lemonade station becomes Switzerland for a minute when the HOA president and Mrs. Lynn debate the optimal width of mulch around young trees. Joke one leans on the cooler if the mulch is any wider. We'll need lane markings. Mrs. Lynn salutes me with a plastic cup and wins the debate with an extra cookie. Back at the house, a postal carrier I don't know slides a peach-colored card into my hand. "Thought you'd want to see this," she says, voice like a friend who respects evidence. It's a change of address confirmation, not mine. Someone submitted a request to forward the Hart Residence Trust to a P.O. box across town. My new informed delivery email flagged it. But the paper in my palm has a different gravity. The carrier already scribbled "hold possible fraud" across it in tidy letters. I could hug her. Instead, I offer cold water and gratitude that sounds like a bell rung once. We walk to the post office together, the card tucked into my binder like a ticket to a play I didn't order. The clerk, a woman with barcode magic in her fingers, pulls up the digital record, frowns, and cancels the forward with the procedural flourish of a magician returning a watch. "We'll place a household lock," she says, "so any future changes need in-person ID and a secret word." She hands me a form to choose the word. I write Evelyn, small and steady. Elder wisdom reflection when you're offered a key. Pick a word that already kept you safe. On the way home, I think about how tricks need darkness. We've been busy switching on lamps, trust recorded, bank flagged, HOA briefed, house rules posted, flood bans glinting. Light is a boring hero. That's why it works. Afternoon brings a visitor with a clipboard of a more municipal kind, Ms. Romero. From the city's rebuilding office, conducting routine post-flood verifications for relief grants. She checks addresses against occupancy and says, "We had a second application for this parcel that didn't match primary residency records." I pour tea and show her my trust, my driver's license. The hosting family letter Adrian drafted for this very script. She checks boxes with the exacting calm of a person who knows how to be sued and avoids it. "All set," she says. "The duplicate won't go anywhere. I don't ask who filed it. I don't need the noun today. Procedural justice hums like my laundry fan." Quick, quirky sidebar, concrete remembers, floods longer than wood does. Tiny moisture pockets can linger like secrets inside its pores for weeks. But if you tape plastic over a square foot of slab and it stays dry after 24-48 hours, you've taught the floor to keep no private weather. Marisol texts me that our test square stayed dry as pride. I send back a basil emoji. It approves. Lila, perhaps sensing the direction of the wind, asks if we can inventory the baby items together. What's safe? What needs airing? Yes, I say. Because sometimes progress shows up disguised as a list. We spread onesies and blankets across the guest bed and talk about laundry soap like diplomats. She asks me about burping cloths and I tell her the truth. Old flannel diapers, folded into thirds. They don't advertise. They just work. For a moment, the room forgets teams. The baby practices a tiny drum roll under her hand. A text pings from Gordon at the bank, FYI. Denial logged on attempted online address change for trust account. Household lock at USPS is a good move. Joke 2 replies on its own. At this rate, I'll bake the post office a cake with a stamp on top. He sends a laughing emoji that nevertheless reads as professionally neutral. Mid-afternoon. While Caleb is at the rental measuring baseboards and Lila naps in the guest room, pregnancy has its veto power. I take a slow tour of my kitchen with a damp cloth. I touch surfaces. Return the salt and pepper to the spots their feet remember, and retire the chalk marker to a drawer labeled art. The house makes a small, satisfied sound. Maybe it's the fridge. Maybe it's me. At 4. The HOA workday winds down with a last wheelbarrow push, and the president sweaty. Sincere leans in to whisper that a traveling contractor has been offering free mold scans in exchange for signatures that turn into liens. I print a half-page warning and tape it to our community board beside the lost cat flyers and piano lessons. Light. Again. We are all minor civil servants when we choose to be. Caleb returns with good news. The flooring crew agreed to work Sunday, which pulls the schedule closer by 2 days. He has the hopeful look of a man who can see the shape of his original house reassembling. If paint dries on time, he says. We could be back by the 20th. The number sits nicely in the room. We celebrate by making dinner like a small orchestra he chops. I stir. The laundry fan keeps time. Lila wakes to the smell of garlic surrendering and pads in. Hair soft, eyes less guarded. She sets the table without commentary. I got a message from the city about my duplicate application, she says. Not quite meeting my gaze, and I withdrew it. She doesn't add explanations, for once. The sentence sits as a sentence. We eat slowly, the way you do when food is also a truce. Joke 3 arrives with the cherry tomatoes. These are living tomatoes, I say. They keep asking to be in the salad. Lila laughs. An unarmed sound, and lifts her glass of water toward the flood band of light traveling across the wall. To visible lines, she says. I clink back. Visible lines. Indeed. After dishes. I open the binder and add new pages, postal lock confirmation. Ms. Romero's verification. Marisol's dry slab text printed and slid into a sleeve. Because I am that person. Mom, Caleb says, I used to think you over-documented Thanksgiving. And now I think we ate because you did. We smile at the same joke and let it be a history. Before bed. I stand by Evelyn's photograph and give her the day's minutes volunteer mulch. Flood bans, postal lock, city clerk with checkboxes, a dinner without chalk. You'd have liked Miss Romero. I tell the frame. She keeps nouns in order. The fan writes its soft cursive above the house. The gold watch ticks without swagger on the dresser. And somewhere in the guest room, a future kicks against a timeline that is finally behaving. I write 3 lines in the notebook. Light is repetitive work. The post office deserves muffins. 20 days isn't forever, it's a plan. We will sleep on a street that remembers water and has chosen to remember fences too. In the morning, we'll carry more mulch. Put a simple fan in the basement stairwell. And let the maple rehearse shade like it means it. The river rests. So do we. Each at our own address, practicing the quiet kind of ownership that doesn't need a microphone to be true. Sunday morning wears a fresh shirt mood. Caleb heads to the rental to meet the paint crew. Lila announces she'll tidy the common areas and asks if she can borrow my measuring tape. I hand it over and make pancakes, the kind that forgive mistakes with maple syrup. The house breathes like a dog that finally found a cool tile. At 10:40, the doorbell rings with sales confidence. A woman in heels that could cross a creek without blinking beams at me. Hi, I'm Dana from Sunnest Realty here for the quick walkthrough. Shouldn't take more than 20. She holds up a tablet where my address is dressed in cheerful fonts. And behind her stands a man cradling a small silver lockbox like jewelry. Lila appears from the hallway, cheeks composed. I just wanted an opinion piece market-wise, she says. All chiffon and weather. I look at the lockbox, then at the threshold, then at her. Close the door, I say. Pleasantly. Dana blinks. Oh, are you the current occupant? I am the lifetime beneficiary, I reply, and the trustee's favorite caller. The lockbox glints in the sun and thinks better of it. Academic phrase of the day. Ostensible authority, the public argument that when someone acts like they're in charge, people might believe it and follow, even if the paperwork says otherwise. Open doors and quick smiles can trick busy brains. Locks exist for a reason. Leela tries a half sigh, half laugh, just gathering data, she insists. Dana could run comps. See if it makes sense to what I ask. Because I like the feel of nouns landing cleanly. To imagine you, she says softly. Someplace easier. I smile the way a nurse smiles at a thermometer that thinks it's a judge. I already live someplace easier, I say. It's called a house with my name on the deed and a kitchen that remembers me. Joke one flips a pancake in my voice. To Dana's credit, she recognizes the weather. We won't trouble you, she says, already stepping back. If you ever need a CMA, call me. I'll call my attorney, I answer pleasantly, and he'll call your broker. The lockbox retreats like a crab with a calendar when the door closes. Lila stands very still, like a person who just attempted parkour in a museum. You scared her, she says. I reminded the room what it is, I say back. Elder wisdom reflection. When someone keeps testing a fence, they are telling you what kind of neighbor they plan to be. You don't argue with the stick. You strengthen the post. I text Adrian uninvited, realtor attempted, quick walkthrough. Lockbox cited, no entry. Please advise. He calls in 5. Good catch, he says. This crosses the quiet enjoyment line twice, once for nerve, twice for instrument. He drafts a notice while I pour coffee that smells like boundaries. The notice is simple as a good recipe under Evelyn's clause. Trust occupancy remains temporary and at will. Any third-party attempts to list, show, value, or encumber the property without my written consent constitute toxic influence. One more breach triggers 30-day revocation. He sends it to Lila's inbox with Ruth Bank Ruth and Miss Romero, City CC'd for sport. Light, again. Quick, quirky sidebar, those sleek real estate lockboxes. Most are Bluetooth now, issuing one-time codes from an app that tattles who opened the door and when. The old combo boxes could be cracked by anyone with patience and a YouTube degree. The new ones gossip for a living. Technology grew a conscience, and I'm in favor. Caleb returns at noon, cheeks flecked with paint optimism. And here's the story before the sandwich has a chance to be mayonnaise. His face folds into that careful square men wear when they want to be fair and also faint. He looks at Lila. We agreed. He says quietly, no more initiatives. Her shoulders climb, then descend. I wanted us to be ready. She tries. We are, I say. For you to go home when your floor's dry. We eat in a silence that is not empty. It's a classroom with an exam on the desk. Joke 2 sets a gentle pencil down. At least the realtor's heels would have ruined my hardwoods, I say. Caleb snorts despite himself. Lila's mouth remembers how to humor for half a second. At 2. Adrian swings by with paper that smells like lemon oil and consequence. He reviews the notice aloud, then lays out my options like polite cutlery. We can wait and watch, he says, or we can start the 30-day clock now. Revocation with cause. Citing today's episode, plus the earlier rumors and bank attempts. He looks at me, not through me. What do you want? What I want is a house that doesn't flinch and a family that graduates from this crisis without cheating. What I choose is a warning with a fuse. Serve the notice, I say. If anything else pushes. We pull Evelyn's lever. Lila receives the email on her phone. I can see the subject line bloom on her face. Notice regarding occupancy, heart, residence, trust. Her hand goes to her belly, unthinking, protective, for a breath. My ribs loosen. No one is evicting a baby, I say gently. We are evicting bad ideas. She nods, unevenly. The afternoon tries to be normal. Caleb runs to the rental to supervise trim. Lila naps. I label a shoebox pantry amnesty and let the truly expired spices retire with honor. I find a nutmeg older than the moon landing and give it a veteran's farewell. The house appreciates ceremony, so do I. Around 4. A text buzzes from Ms. Romero Saw Realtor Inquiry for your parcel pop-up in permitting portal pre-listing data pulls. Flagged as no action private trust occupancy. Let me know if anyone knocks again. It's nice to have a city clerk who can swat flies with a drop-down. At 5. Mrs. Lynn arrives with a pot of something that smells like competence. Heard heels on your porch, she says. Conspiratorial as a helpful aunt. I waved from my window with the expression that means, not today. I laugh and set bowls. We eat together at the table that was almost a brochure. Lila joins us. Spooning soup with the hesitant gratitude of a person discovering mercy doesn't always come with a contract. Mrs. Lin tells a story about her cousin who tried to flip her grandmother's house and learned the ancient Chinese art of boundaries instead. We all clap when the punchline arrives, a notarized letter and a line of aunts on the porch. We clear dishes. Caleb returns, tired and useful, and drops into a chair with the sigh of a responsible man. Painters are ahead, he says. They'll finish walls by Wednesday. He takes Lila's hand. We're going to make it back by the 20th. She nods, eyes complicated. like someone learning the difference between efficiency and respect. Adrian, packing his briefcase, gives me a look that says, "You're driving." I nod. "If there's one more push," I tell him. We start the 30. He tips the brim of his metaphorical hat and leaves paper in his wake. Dusk climbs the maple. I walk the hall, touch Evelyn's frame. We're almost done. I tell her, "Your claws worked like a lighthouse." The fan above hums its cursive. The binder on the counter grows one more tab labeled "Realtor Visit No." Joke 3 writes itself in my notebook. Installed no CMA without grandma policy. Before bed, I sit with Lila on the stoop. The air smells like wet bark and faint lemonade. She's quiet long enough to make quiet do a trick. "I thought I was building us a future," she says at last. "Turns out I was trying to annex yours." I let the sentence find its own coat. "Fear does that," I say. "It wants more square footage." We watch a neighbor walk a dog that looks like a small ottoman. "I can learn your house," she says. "You don't need to," I answer. "You need to learn your own. Mine just needed you to remember it isn't a project." We sit there until the porch light clicks on like a reminder. The house behind us is exactly itself. Not a showroom, not a lesson, not a list. Just a place that kept its promises when the river forgot to. I write 3 lines before sleep. Heels at the door, lockbox in the sun, fence held. Ostensible authority loses to actual paper. 30-day lever is primed, and mercy is still not surrender. The watch ticks without swagger. The maple drafts a shadow on the floorboards that looks like applause. Tomorrow we hang curtains in the rental and argue playfully about drawer liners. Tomorrow will be small work, which is the opposite of drama and the twin of peace. Monday arrives with the sound of painter's tape surrendering. Caleb texts a photo from the rental sunlight, skimming new toasted oat floors, and a caption that smells like relief trim tomorrow. Keys by the 19th, if the inspector smiles. I send back a thumbs up and a saucepan emoji because dinners have always been our unit of measure. We spend the morning being domestic on purpose. Lila and I fold tiny onesies on the guest bed. An assembly line of clouds. She asks about drawer liners. "Do we need them?" she ventures. "Only if you enjoy paper with opinions," I say, and hold up a roll of plain white. We cut quiet rectangles while the house practices breathing. The maple outside writes brief essays in shade. Academic phrase of the day, liminality. The public argument that there's a threshold between was and will be, and we stand in it longer than we think. Rituals in our hands, waiting for the next room to call our name. The last days before move back live here, not quite settled. No longer storm. At 10, Miss Romero from the city knocks with a clipboard that has finally begun to look less like a verdict and more like a checklist. "Final verification," she says. Just confirming no unpermitted work happened while the flood story was still fresh. We walk room to room. She scans the quiet laundry fan, notes Marisol's report, and pauses at the taped house rules inside the cabinet. "Open concept applies only to kindness," she reads aloud, smiling. "May I borrow that for staff meetings?" "Please," I say. Paper is my love language, but I'm not possessive. When we reach the dining room, she lingers a second. "Some homes get louder after a disaster," she says softly. "Yours feels like someone turned the volume down just enough to hear what matters." I think of Evelyn's underlined claws and the binder's steady spine. "We found the knob," I say. Joke 1 strolls by, gentle as a dish towel. We put a child lock on it. Miss Romero signs, stamps, and leaves a copy thick with municipal comfort. I slide it into the binder behind Realtor Visit No. The binder gives a small, satisfied thunk the sound paper makes when it knows it's done its day's work. Lila watches this ritual as if I've taught the room a new chord. "It's calming," she admits. "Knowing where the proof lives." "The proof likes knowing too," I tell her. Around noon. The doorbell rings. A man with a tool bag and a cap that says City Locks smiles at my threshold. 11:30 Recce, he asks, tapping his tablet. Lila appears behind me. Startled, I lift an eyebrow that has written entire essays. No Recce, I say, kindly as a judge. He checks the order. Online work request, same address. I shake my head. Cancelled. He nods like he's been here before, not my house. This situation happens after floods, he says. Everybody thinks new keys solve old habits. He takes a photo of my cancellation signature and leaves with a wave. I text Adrian unrequested Recce attempt. Order cancelled at door. He replies, logged. One more pebble on the toxic influence pile. Lamp stays on. Quick, quirky sidebar, the perforated edge on classic legal pads. The little line that lets the sheet tear off neatly dates to the 1880s. A mill worker named Thomas Hawley stitched leftover scraps into pads, then cut that margin so judges wouldn't have to eat paper confetti. In other words, law got tidy because somebody was tired of sweeping. I think of that every time a seam rips away cleanly and reveals order underneath. In the afternoon, we pack the leaving for 3 weeks box into a returning home box, the linen spray with cottage opinions, I let it retire halfway, the spare chargers, the 2 novels I promised to love someday. Lila stacks 3 baby blankets I sewed last night, quiet blues. 1 sunny square on top. Thank you, she says. No packaging around it. You're welcome, I say, equally unwrapped. Elder wisdom reflection. When borrowed time ends. Leave the room better than you found it, bed corner sharp, sink empty. A thank you where someone can trip over it and smile. Caleb arrives with paint on his knuckles and the grin of a man finishing the last question on a hard test. Inspectors at 3 tomorrow, he says, if she passes us. Movers on the 19th. Sleep there the 20th. He kisses Lila's forehead and the future kicks in a scent. We open a calendar and write the dates down in ink as if the days could smell confidence. At 3. Gordon from the bank calls with a voice that has shed all turbulence. Household lock at the post confirmed. Any future equity chatter will trigger a call to your trustee. I thank him and add his note to the binder under a tab I label with an indulgence, peace. Joke 2 knocks on the spine. At this rate, the binder needs a nap. Lila laughs for real this time. She is learning the difference between humor as weather and humor as weapon. Near 4. The HOA chat lights up. Someone spotted a white van offering free air tests. Mrs. Lynn posts a photo and a caption that could earn her a badge. If they can't show you a license and the fan blows at your checkbook, say no. Drink soup. The thread fills with ladles and thumbs. Light is repetitive work. Our block is getting good at it. In the kitchen, I write 2 lists for their home extra towels, a small basil in a pot, the plain drawer liners, and for my quiet Recce with my locksmith on my schedule. After they move back, replace the pantry's single snide chalk label with nothing. Buy a new doormat that says hello without enthusiasm. Lila places her own sticky note next to mine. Return pantry marker to art drawer. Ask permission before enthusiasm. She smiles at her handwriting, like a person practicing a new instrument. Toward evening, Caleb drives Lila to the rental to walk the rooms and let Hope try on its real shoes. I stay back with the basil and a sunset that is doing its polite best. The doorbell clicks again, soft this time. Miss Romero has returned. Off the clock, with a brown paper bag that smells like tortillas and beans. For your notebook, she says. A recipe from my mother, you eat it on thresholds to bless the after. We stand in the doorway and share 2 warm bites. It feels like a small graduation with sensible shoes. When they return, Lila's eyes are cotton with sleep and paint fumes. The nursery is Good, she whispers, as if the room might overhear and blush. We'll hang the lemon garland, Caleb adds, in the backyard, not above the crib. He winks. I put the pantry amnesty shoebox in his trunk. Give this to your kitchen, I say. Tell it the chalk era has ended. Just after 8. My phone buzzes with an email from Sunnest, the realtor who met my lockbox glare, apologizing for the confusion earlier and cheerfully offering a complimentary valuation in 6 months. No obligation. I forward it to Adrian with the subject complimentary boundary test. He replies with a short line that feels like a hand on a shoulder, logged. No action. Lamps on. Joke 3. Whispered to the basil. If compliments were countertops, we'd all have marble. The plant leans into the sink light, dramatic as ever. I water it because I like a diva that only wants what it needs. We end the night with tea on the porch steps, all 3 of us looking in the same direction for once. The new flood height bands on the poles wink in the dusk. I'm sorry I kept pushing, Lila says. Voice small but meeting daylight. Fear kept yelling efficiency. Fear yells. I agree. Stewardship whispers. Caleb squeezes her hand. The porch light clicks on, somewhere in the rental. Paint cures into walls with jobs. Before bed, I add today's small mercies to the notebook. Inspector tomorrow. Movers next. Reiki only when the threshold is ours again. Threshold food tastes like permission. I touch Evelyn's frame. We're almost through the doorway, I tell her. The fan writes its steady cursive. The watch ticks without swagger. The binder rests. Fat and satisfied, under its new peace tab, and the house. This stubborn ship that kept us dry by 3 inches and a grandmother's pen. Hums the quieter song it prefers. In the morning, we'll iron 2 curtain panels and argue lightly, kindly, about whether the crib should face the window or the door. The answer will be whichever leaves the most room for a small human to dream. The rest of us will practice it too. The inspector arrives with a clipboard that looks like it finished its homework early. She walks the rental with Caleb and Lila while I hover at the edge of usefulness, holding a roll of painter's tape like a talisman. Floors, she asks. Dry, Caleb says. Trim plumb. She crouches, checks the threshold where last week the river left a calling card, and nods. Seal's good. Air exchange is honest. You can schedule movers. Lila exhales the kind of breath that makes a person smaller and freer at once. Academic phrase of the day. Transition management. The public argument that endings and beginnings work best when you assign jobs to both. Today's ending gets lists and labels. Tomorrow's beginning gets pizza and patience. At noon, we stand in the nursery that used to be a paint store brochure and is now a room with a crib and a lemon yellow garland that remembers the backyard. Lila folds the last of the onesies into a drawer lined with plain paper that has 0 opinions. Window or door? Caleb asks, measuring the crib's angle with his hands like a cameraman. Door, I say, so the first thing you see is arrival. Lila smiles. Arrival. She repeats, as if the word came with soft socks. We drive back to my place to plan the move. On the table, I set 3 neat stacks, move back, leave here, and borrowed and returned. Joke 1 points at the 3rd stack like a tour guide. This is where the chalk marker retires with honors. Lila grins and salutes the pen. Caleb writes Saturday's timeline in block letters that look like scaffolding. 8 a.m. Truck, 10 a.m. mattresses, noon boxes, 2 p.m. last check. Elder wisdom reflection when you hand back borrowed time. Leave a thank you in plain sight, the kind you can trip over on a tired day, and remember that kindness has a forwarding address. Mid-afternoon. A text pings from Adrian Recchi confirmed for Monday. On your order. After move, mail lock holds. Realtor apologized again. No further inquiries. I add the Reiki to my For My Quiet list and underline it once the same number of times Evelyn underlined quiet enjoyment. The binder, fat under its new Peace tab, gives a contented thump when I close it, which is how paper purrs. Quick, quirky sidebar, the average house key has 6 cuts. There are more than 19,000 possible bidding codes for a common model. In other words, your security can be one tiny jag, different from your neighbor's entire story. I like that small changes. Big piece. We spend the late afternoon doing threshold rehearsals where shoes land, where the diaper bag hangs, where Thursday's soup returns once the world stops spinning. Lila asks if we might host one proper goodbye dinner in my dining room, no speeches. Just plates. Yes, I say, with conditions as soft as napkin sunset. Quick. Laughter. She texts Mrs. Lin to borrow a casserole dish and receives. In return, a photo of 3. Your neighbor is a national park, she whispers, protected and generous. I nod. The house has always attracted the right wildlife. At 6, we sit for that dinner salad that squeaks with good intention, lasagna with a personality, and bread that remembers mornings. Caleb makes a small toast that doesn't try to be a parade. To dry floors, to lemon garlands, to a house that taught us the volume knob, Lila adds, to labels taped inside cabinets, not on people. I raise my glass to grandmothers who wrote in ink. The room agrees and clinks. The doorbell rings once in the middle of dessert, cautious as a deer. It's Gordon from the bank on his evening walk, baseball cap doing its best to be inconspicuous. Saw the truck scheduled in our system, he says. Thought I'd say congrats. He hands me a card that reads simply, contact me first. Joke 2 tips its hat if you ever run for office on the platform of paper. You've got my vote. He laughs in the way of a man who would rather file than campaign. After dishes. Caleb and Lila pack the last of their 3-week pile now we're actually leaving pile, and we do one more lap of the rooms. The guest bed is made hotel perfect, the linen spray is retired, the pantry marker sleeps in the art drawer where crayons will outvote it. On the hall table sits a handwritten card addressed to me. I don't open it yet. Gifts should cool before reading. They turn in early, moving eats optimism for breakfast. I sit with my notebook a while and write tomorrow's choreography in Noun's truck. Straps, dolly, lists, water, lunch, hugs. The house practices its evening hum. The maple traces a familiar, friendly wing on the wall. Evelyn's photograph watches like a lighthouse. We're almost there. I tell her. The fan writes its cursive reply. Morning arrives in socks. The movers show on time, strong and polite. Their dolly squeaking like a mouse who passed the bar exam. Caleb loads, Lila directs. I do the job of 1,000 aunts hand out water, keep the list honest, point at corners that hide charging bricks. The baby kicks like a drumline approving the agenda. By 10, the truck is Tetris, and by noon, the rental has its skin back a couch with opinions, a rug with a sense of direction, a crib that applauds silently when you set the last box down. A hiccup at 1, an extra dresser refuses to agree with the stairwell math. Joke 3 wedges itself kindly if it won't go up. It can stay down and be philosophical. Caleb decides the foyer needed a surface for keys anyway. The dresser, flattered, settles. At 2, we do the last check of my house. Lila stands in the dining room and touches the sideboard with fingertips that have learned museum manners. I didn't understand this piece, she says. Now I do. Caleb replaces the spare key in the little ceramic bird by the door and looks at me the way sons did before GPS. We're good, he asks. We're good, I answer. Go home. On the porch. We hug a way that doesn't require choreography. Lila presses the thank you card into my hand. There's also a note in the binder. She says, under peace. You filed your gratitude, I ask. Delighted. Filed and tabbed, she says. We laugh. And the sound doesn't owe anybody an apology. The truck pulls away. The house listens to the street return to regular programming, a bike bell, a dog practicing vowels. Mrs. Lin clinking jars. I stand in the entry and breathe. Then I do the 3 things my list told me to do, call the locksmith Monday. 9 a.m., text Adrian. All moved, Riki scheduled, binder updated, and put on a kettle because some rituals are also locks. When the tea is poured, I open the card. Inside, Lila's handwriting has dropped its bravado. Thank you for the room and the rules, it says. I'm learning the difference between efficiency and stewardship. I hope I did not learn it too late. A separate note for the Peace tab asks permission to stop by Thursday after the Riki so we can plan soups again. I smile and slide it into the sleeve. Paper isn't love, but it keeps love from forgetting. Just before evening, Miss Romero texts a photo of the last flood height band she installed at the end of our street, sun catching it like a coin trick. Visible lines. She writes, "See you at the next preparedness meeting. Bring that cabinet rule." I send a thumbs up and an emoji I've decided means lasagna. The porch light clicks on by itself. A habit I set years ago when the world's schedule feels bigger than mine. I touch the binder, pat the sideboard, check the pantry shelf where rice is simply rice, and let the fan ride its quiet assurance across the ceiling. Tomorrow is Riki Day. A new jag on an old key. A small change that invites big peace. Tomorrow is also pizza on a living room floor 3 blocks away and a lemon garland grinning at a window that finally has a job. Tonight. I sit with a house that held and was held, and I let the quiet be the ending it earned. Monday begins with the locksmith's cheerful knock, a sound like confidence with manners. He spreads a small velvet pad on my sideboard, respectful, like placing tools on an altar, and unrolls picks, blanks, and a gauge that looks too delicate to do such serious work. 2 cylinders, 1 back deadbolt, he says. Same key for all, same song. Please, I answer. He smiles and gets to humming while the maple scatters light across the floor in polite coins. Academic phrase of the day, identity, by slight variation. The public argument that a system can become entirely itself by changing 1 notch. 1 habit, 1 cut, a key tooth's height, a boundary sentence. The difference between guest room and move-in. He files, tests, taps. The pins inside the lock click like shyness, learning to speak when he's done. He places 2 bright keys in my palm. They're light, almost unserious. But the door's reply is firm turn, thock, peace. He hands me a 3rd. Hide a key, he asks. I shake my head. Upgrades, no more ceramic birds. Joke one smiles at the memory. We both know the bird did its best. I sign his carbon paper receipt, blue copy for me. White for his folder, and file mine under the new tab I made last night, keys. Paper purrs when a tab finds its job. The locksmith wipes the hardware with a soft cloth. As if boundaries deserve a blessing, I agree. At 10. I walk the house the way a nurse walks a last round at dawn. Windows latched like tidy thoughts. Pantry unlabeled and unafraid. Dining room a dining room. In the utility room, Marisol's no mold. No intrusion letter hangs beside Ms. Romero's inspection stamp. My fingers graze both like pages in a hymn book. Caleb texts a photo from their living room, a couch with opinions under a lemon garland that remembered the backyard. Lila's feet on a poof. A mug perched on a coaster that says, "Ask first. First nap in the new old home," he writes. Tonight, pizza on the floor. I send a heart and a pot emoji. Soups are a future we've earned. At noon, the doorbell nudges. It's Lila, alone. Hair in a soft knot, shoulders doing less theater. I came after the Riki, she says, eyes checking for welcome. I open the door and the new key stays in my pocket like a steady friend. She hands me a bakery box. Inside, 4 cinnamon rolls glow like polite planets. Housewarming, she says, for both of us. We eat one at the table. Sticky fingers, the kind of silence that mends. Elder wisdom reflection when you accept a peace offering. Do it with your whole mouth. Half swallows keep grudges chewing. A clean bite says, we're moving on, one sweet at a time. We make a small plan like a small bridge. Thursdays will be soup again. She'll text first if she needs the fan in the laundry after 9. I'll text first if I want to drop a casserole or a basil plant on their porch. We smile at the normalcy of it. She glances toward the hall where Evelyn's photograph lives. I filed my apology, she says. Under peace. Joke 2 lifts an eyebrow. That's a high-traffic tab, I say. May it wear out from use. Quick, quirky sidebar. Cinnamon's warmth isn't only metaphor. The compound cinnamaldehyde actually triggers heat receptors on your tongue, which is why cozy tastes like a fireplace. Boundaries work similarly. The brain relaxes when the rules are sensible, posted, and followed. Warmth you can point to. After lunch. I take the binder out to the porch and give it sunshine like a book on graduation day. The tabs sit in a neat rainbow trust: orders, bank, city, HOA, repairs, keys, peace. I add one more at the very back: soup. Inside, I tuck a single index card in my mother's slanted hand: chicken noodle for storms, tomato basil for apologies, lentil for rebuilding, potato leek for quiet victories. Paper learns recipes, humans learn timing. Caleb swings by to return the guest room key that the ceramic bird used to hide. He leaves it in my palm like a rite of passage. Kept it on me the whole move, he says. Felt wrong to set it down. It's done right now, I answer, and slip it on a ring labeled past. He looks around the house, our house, and it looks back at him, unflinching. Thank you, he says. And it isn't about the linens or the casseroles or the lemon garland diplomacy. He means the fence and the map and the lesson pressed between them. We stand by the sideboard. He runs one fingertip along its edge in the approved museum manner. I used to think this was just a heavy table, he says. It's a memory with drawers. He hesitates. Mom, I'll keep us in our own address. The sentence lands like a beam settling true. The maple outside rustles and amen. Mid-afternoon. Miss Romero emails a photo from the community board, our scam contractor's flyer now laminated. Thumbtacked under a sign-up for block party chili. Beneath it, someone has taped a printout of my cabinet rule in 18-point font: open concept applies only to kindness. The letters look bolder in public. Light does that. The day hums. I water the basil dramatic. As always, wipe the stove in slow circles. And set out 2 bowls because Thursday isn't here yet, but practice is pleasant. The fan writes its soft cursive. The watch ticks like a metronome somebody finally respects. I think of the flood's first inch at the curb, the second on the step, how neighbors became cousins, how entitlement tried to annex what disaster merely wet, and how a pen from a woman who loved iron skillets held back a tide nobody plans for until it's staring at the mahogany. Near 5. Leela texts a photo of their pizza on the floor and a caption: door faces arrival. Beneath. A smaller line: stewardship, efficiency, progress. Typed and tidy. I tape it inside my cabinet, next to house rules, where good phrases live. The porch light clicks on as if the house wants to say it with me: we made it through. Caleb and Lila walk over with 2 empty pizza plates and 3 questions about whether time actually expires only in drama, whether the crib should get a darker curtain not yet, and whether Thursday soups can begin with lentil yes, rebuilding. We talk just long enough to practice leaving at a good time. Then hug like relatives who both know the train schedule. When the door closes, I place my palm flat against it, not to bar, but to bless. The new key waits in its drawer. The old bird rests in a box labeled Keeps. I make tea and carry it to the hall where Evelyn's photograph keeps watch. Your clauses worked, I tell her. Your underlines grew spines. I imagine her nod the slight, satisfied tilt she's saved for sensible outcomes. I take my notebook to bed and write the last 3 lines this house asked of me. Keys changed, peace unchanged. The fence is not a wall, it's a shoreline. Family returns better when the map is honest. And then I let the fan lullaby the plaster and the watch count softness. Outside, the flood height bands wink in the streetlight like bookmarks in a long, patient book. Inside, the house knows my steps again. We have both learned to keep what's ours without shouting. We began ankle deep in a neighborhood that smelled like river water and detergent, where kindness ran on extension cords and borrowed fans. I opened my door to my son and his pregnant wife for a few weeks, and quickly learned that floods aren't the only things that creep entitlement can, too. What followed wasn't a brawl, it was a careful choreography, a guest room made ready, a pantry relabeled without permission, heirlooms wrapped in plastic, a rumor that I'd moved to assisted living, rather than detonate under a chandelier. We chose daylight and paper. Evelyn's trust, her underlined clause about my quiet enjoyment, became our lighthouse. With Adrian's calm, we recorded the trust, flagged the bank, posted house rules, and invited professionals who prefer numbers over narratives, a contractor's dry meter, a city inspector's stamp, a banker's fraud alert, a postal lock with a secret word named after a grandmother. Each step was small and visible. Each restored an inch of floor. We practiced the gentle power of procedure orders instead of outrage, logs instead of guesses, polite notices that carried consequence. We laughed lightly where oxygen allowed at Living Salt, at a label maker demoted to the art drawer, at a realtor's heels that would have ruined hardwoods. We kept an elder wisdom cadence, anger loves witnesses. Truth prefers a quiet room and a glass of water. Along the way, a community relearned its lamps, flood height bands on poles, scam warnings on corkboards, soups that make neighbors into cousins. In the end, keys turned and peace didn't. The guest room returned to quiet. The dining room kept its stories. The binder's last tab read, Peace. The first Thursday soup went back on the calendar. Stewardship replaced efficiency. A son found his map. A daughter-in-law learned the difference between annexing and arriving. And a house, held by a grandmother's pen and a handful of steady nouns, remembered how to breathe.